We often assume that when we don't follow through our plans, something has gone wrong. A lack of discipline, a character flaw, maybe, weak motivation. But psychology does not describe this as a moral failure, it describes it as a predictable outcome of how the human mind works. This video does not offer any fixes, it doesn't offer motivation. It only explains what happens inside the psychological system when we make and break promises to ourselves. The planning mind versus the acting mind. Research in cognitive psychology distinguishes between abstract planning and concrete execution. Studies by Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky shows that humans plan using what is called system 2 thinking, slow, rational, future oriented cognition. But action happens under system 1, fast, emotional, context driven processing. When you create a checklist or a promise, you're operating in a calm, abstract mental state. When you fail to follow it, you're operating in a real time environment shaped by fatigue, emotion, and uncertainty. Psychology does not treat these two as the same mental system, they are functionally different modes of cognition. The planning fallacy. The phenomenon known as the planning fallacy was first described by Kahneman and Tversky in 1979. It refers to the consistent tendency of humans to underestimate time, overestimate energy, and ignore future obstacles. Importantly, the bias persists even when people know they have failed before. This means repeatedly breaking promise does not correct future planning. The mind continues to assume an ideal future state. From a research perspective, optimism is not learned away by failure. Ego depletion and cognitive load. Roy Baumeister's work on self control as a limited resource introduced the concept of ego depletion. While later studies debate its magnitude, most agree on one point: cognitive load reduces follow through. Decision making, emotional regulation, stress, and social interaction all draw from the same mental resource used for self regulation. By the time action is required, the psychological system may already be depleted. From this perspective, broken promises are not a single failure, they are the endpoint of accumulated mental expenditure. Identity conflict and self discrepancy. Tori Higgins' self discrepancy theory explains internal conflict as a mismatch between the actual self, the ideal self, and the out self. Checklists often represent the ideal or out self. Failure activates emotional state like guilt, shame, or anxiety, not because of the task itself, but because of the perceived identity inconsistency. Psychology frames this as cognitive dissonance, not laziness. The discomfort comes from identity conflict, not task avoidance. Time perception and the future self. Research in behavioral psychology shows that humans perceive their future selves almost like strangers. Studies using fMRI scans shows reduced neural overlap when people think about their future selves compared to their present selves. In other words, the brain does not fully experience future consequences as personally relevant. Promises are made to someone the brain does not entirely identify as me. Emotional forecasting error. Psychologist Daniel Gilbert's work on affective forecasting shows that humans are poor predictors of future emotional states. We assume motivation will remain stable, emotion will be manageable, stress will be tolerable. In reality, emotion states fluctuate more than anticipated. When emotional environment changes, behavior changes with it, often automatically. This shift is not consciously chosen. From a psychological standpoint, broken promises are not evidence of weak character. They are emergent behavior from cognitive system separation, biased time estimation, identity discrepancy, emotional unpredictability, limited mental resources. Psychology does not frame this as something wrong, it frames it as something human. There are explanations, but not judgments, and not answers, at least not in this video.